She had been with the team for 3 years, but to most of them she was just part of the background. The guys from the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, commonly known as DevGru, would roll into her maintenance bay at the Joint Expeditionary Base with their modified ground mobility vehicles, and she would hand them a clipboard. They would point out a vibration in the fourth axle or a glitch in the engine management system, and she would nod, make a note, and tell them when to come back. And they never asked her name, and she never offered it. To them, she was simply the mechanic, a civilian contractor with grease under her fingernails who kept their multi-million-dollar equipment running. What they did not know, and what her personnel file meticulously omitted, was that Master Sergeant, retired, Valeria Val Cross, had spent 12 years in the Air Force's clandestine combat control squadrons, and she had been part of specialized tactical air control parties attached to Army Rangers and Delta Force, operating in the shadows during the early phases of both Afghanistan and Iraq. Her job had been to talk in fast movers and gunships, painting targets with lasers while hiding in mud huts and mountain crevices. She had 2 Bronze Stars with V devices for valor and a Purple Heart from a firefight in Samara, where she had dragged a wounded sergeant to cover while simultaneously directing an AC-130 gunship onto an enemy strongpoint. A roadside bomb in 2011 had shattered her left knee and fractured her pelvis, ending her combat career. The military had given her a medical retirement, a pension, and a one-way ticket back to civilian life. She had retreated to the desert, and taking a civil service job as a lead mechanic because it required her to work with her hands and kept her close to the smell of jet fuel and tactical vehicles. It was the only therapy that worked. The physical pain was manageable, but the silence of civilian life was deafening. Here, among the wrenches and the hydraulic lifts, she could bury the memories under layers of motor oil. She watched the SEALs come and go, these younger, intensely fit men who operated in a world she had once inhabited. She saw the way they carried themselves, the cocky swagger of apex predators. She felt no resentment towards them. She had been the same way once. But she also noticed the small things they missed during their pre-mission inspections, the tiny indicators of wear and stress that only someone with her specific experience would catch. She fixed them without comment, part of her job, part of her silent vigil. The afternoon, the 8-man troop rolled in with their 2 black GMVs, and she knew something was different. There was a tension in the air, a tightness around their eyes that spoke of a hard mission brief. The troop commander, a lieutenant commander who looked too young to have that much salt and pepper in his beard, handed her the clipboard. "Ma'am, we need the long-range fuel tanks triple-checked and the comms arrays swept for any frequency bleed. We roll at 0300. She glanced at the vehicles. They were loaded for a deep penetration. The stripped down but bristling with extra ammo cans and suppressed weapons. "Fuel bladders are good," she said, her voice flat. "I just recalibrated the pumps last week. I'll run a diagnostic on the Sintgars and the Harris radios." The lieutenant commander hesitated, looking at her. Most support contractors just said, "Yes, sir," and got to work. She had given him a status report without being asked. "Appreciate it," he said, before turning to his men. As they walked away, Val watched them. And she saw the heavy rucks, the extra water, the sheer weight of the ordnance they were carrying. They were heading somewhere deep, somewhere hot, and they were going in light on support. She hoped her fuel pumps held up. She hoped their radios were clear. That night, she worked later than usual, running the diagnostics twice, ensuring every cable was seated properly. She didn't sleep well, the phantom echoes of old combat radio chatter filling her dreams. The call came in at 0547. The Val was already awake, sitting on the edge of her bunk in the Waimea, drinking instant coffee and watching the first hint of purple lighten the eastern sky over the Gulf of Aden. The base alarm wasn't a siren, but a specific frequency crackle over the tactical channel she kept in her small quarters, a habit she had never been able to break. She heard the frantic, broken transmissions, a call sign she didn't recognize, but she knew the grid coordinate they kept repeating. It was deep in the jagged, volcanic mountains to the south, a place where the laws of man faded and only the law of the rifle ruled. By the time she reached the motor pool, the air was electric with controlled panic. The 8 SEALs from the previous day were gearing up, but their faces were ashen. The troop commander, the young-looking lieutenant commander, was pale under his tan. He was on the satellite radio, his voice strained. "I need that QRF released. We are launching now, but I need the birds in the air. We have 8 friendlies on the ground, possible casualties, and 50-plus hostiles converging." The Quick Reaction Force, a platoon of Army Rangers stationed on the other side of the base, had been alerted, but the word came down from the Joint Operations Center. Wait for the air support to prep. Wait for the intel to be confirmed. Wait for the authorization from a general 3,000 miles away. The bureaucracy of war was grinding its gears while men were dying. Val stood in the doorway of the bay, listening. The radio squawked again, a different voice, weaker, laced with static and the unmistakable crack of small arms fire in the background. "Contact! Contact! Effective enemy fire! We are pinned in a wadi, taking fire from 3 directions. We need air! We need air now!" The lieutenant commander slammed his fist against the hood of the GMV. "The Apaches are 20 minutes out. The fast movers are 35. They don't have that kind of time." He turned to his remaining men, his voice cracking with the agony of the choice before him. "We're going in the trucks. We'll punch through the pass and extract them." It was suicide. Val knew it, and from the looks on their faces, so did they. The terrain was impossible for vehicles. They would be sitting ducks in the narrow canyon approaches, picked off by rocket-propelled grenades before they got within a mile. They were operators, the best in the world. But they were about to die trying to save their brothers because there was no other option. Val stepped forward. "That grid," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Everyone stopped. She pointed to the map spread across the GMV's hood. "It's here, right? The Shaab Valley?" The lieutenant commander looked at her, annoyed and bewildered. "Get back, ma'am. We don't have time." "I know that valley," she said, ignoring him. She tapped the map. "I was there in 2007. We had an OP on that ridgeline for 3 weeks, watching the village of Al-Karf. The wadi they're in runs east to west, with a high saddle at the western end. There's a finger of dead ground that runs almost to the canyon mouth. If they can move, they can reach it." She looked up, her eyes no longer the flat, tired eyes of a mechanic. They were the eyes of a master sergeant, a combat controller, a killer. But you can't get to them in time by ground. And you can't wait for the air to get clearance. A young petty officer, his face smeared with camouflage paint, stared at her. "Who the hell are you?" Val didn't answer him. She looked at the lieutenant commander. "You have an armed MQ-9 Reaper loitering overhead, don't you? I heard it on the net. It's station-keeping because the pilot is 1,000 miles away and he doesn't have a terminal air controller on the ground to clear his fires." She pointed to the radio handset in his hand. "Dig, give me that. Give me the frequency for the Reaper, and give me the ground team's frequency." The lieutenant commander was speechless for a moment. "Ma'am, you can't just—" "I am a qualified Joint Terminal Attack Controller," she said, the words hitting the humid air like ice water. "I have over 500 combat sorties under my belt. I have laced targets for B-1s in Tora Bora and called in danger close 500-pounders in Fallujah. Those men in that wadi don't have time for you to check my references. But they have maybe 10 minutes before that 50-plus enemy force zeroes in on their position and annihilates them. Now give me the goddamn radio." The lieutenant commander stared at her for a heartbeat. A lifetime. He saw the set of her jaw, the absolute certainty in her posture. It was the look of a professional. He handed her the radio. Val didn't hesitate. She grabbed the radio handset. not her fingers flying across the keypad as she punched in the frequency for the unmanned aerial vehicle orbiting silently at 25,000 feet. The vehicle bay, with its oily smell and scattered tools, faded away. She was no longer a mechanic. She was back in the game. Reaper 01, this is Gambler 62 on TAC 1 Alpha. Over. Her voice was crisp, controlled, a stark contrast to the panic that had filled the space moments before. The response from the ground control station, likely somewhere in the Nevada desert, was immediate. Gambler 62, Reaper 01, send traffic. I am assuming terminal control authority for ground element call sign Grommet. Request your current sensor orientation and weapons load. Roger, Gambler. Sensor is currently scanning Route Bluebird. Load is 2 GBU-12S and 4 Hellfires. Confirm you have eyes on the ground element? Val didn't. Not yet. But she had the grid. Stand by, 01. She switched frequencies. Had her heart hammering against her ribs, not from fear but from the familiar addictive rush of the fight. She was on the ground team's channel now, the one filled with static and gunfire. Grommet 6! Grommet 6! This is Gambler 62! Radio check, over! For a terrifying second, there was nothing but the crackle of small arms. Then a breathless, pained voice cut through. Gambler! Who the hell is Gambler? We're a little busy here. Grommet, I am your new best friend. I have a Reaper with teeth and I need a eyes on. Pop smoke, I say again. Pop smoke on your position. Down in the valley, the SEAL team leader, a senior chief, was bleeding from 3 places. He had given up hope of air support, assuming the bureaucracy had failed them. But habit made him reach for the smoke canister on his vest. He pulled the pin and tossed it a few feet away, a plume of vibrant red smoke blooming against the gray rocks. Gambler, this is Grommet. Smoke is out. Red smoke. Val switched frequencies again, her brain working like the supercomputer she had once trained on. Reaper 01, Gambler. Push your sensor to my grid. Confirm you have red smoke. Gambler, Reaper, contact. Good smoke. I have the ground element. They are in a wadi eastern end. I have multiple heat signatures moving on the high ground to the north, south, and west. Count confirms at least 4 dozen. They are converging on the Grommet position. Range from friendlies is... shit. The closest element is less than 100 meters. Val felt the cold clarity of the tactical picture form in her mind. They were surrounded, and the enemy was using the classic hammer and anvil tactic, pushing them from 3 sides. 01, Gambler, I need you to sanitize the western ridge. Give me a type of control. Gambler, I am sensor and weapons only. I have no eyes on the ground. You are my control. You are cleared to employ. It was the moment of truth. If she made a mistake, and if her coordinates were off by a few meters, the 500-pound bombs would obliterate the men she was trying to save. But if she did nothing, they were dead anyway. She thought of the young petty officer who had asked who she was. She thought of the blood she had seen in the cockpits of damaged helicopters years ago. She took a deep breath, the smell of hydraulic fluid filling her nostrils. She was home. Grommet 6, Gambler. Danger close. I have a GBU with your name on it for the ridge to your west. I need you to be low, I mean in the dirt low, in 50 seconds. Acknowledge. Gambler, roger that. We are hugging the rocks. Send it. Reaper 01, Gambler. Cleared hot. Put it right on that western ridge line. Splash 1. On the small screen in the Nevada control station, the crosshairs lined up on the cluster of heat signatures scrambling along the ridge line, just 200 meters from the pinned-down seals. The pilot flipped the cover off the release button. Weapons away. 25,000 feet below, the sound was unlike anything the mountains had heard before. The earth shook. Even from the base, miles away, they felt a low rumble vibrate through the concrete floor of the vehicle bay. On the radio net, the sound was apocalyptic.